What is going on, everybody? It is Dylan with Astrodfs bringing you a brand new video, and in today's video we are going over Week 8's cash player pool. So these are guys that I'm targeting. No final decision on any of these guys, but guys I'm just kind of looking at, especially in this massive $25 up. This is what I recommend everyone play. Kind of gives you a feel on a weekly basis of where your main line is at. Obviously, if you're playing tournaments and stuff like that, multiple entries, this is completely different, but I always like basing my lines off of this. So let's get into it with Jordan Love at 7,100 against Jacksonville. Now, I do think someone like Jalen Hurts is in a really good spot as well. Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud, some of these guys are in a good spot, but against this very, very bad defense who I guess is getting healthier in the secondary, but still overall just as a team is just playing very, very poor. And a Green Bay team that is just putting up points, right? You see every game that Jordan Love has been on the field for, they're putting up 24 plus points a game. And with that, the touchdowns are just ridiculous, right? The interceptions are also there. 23 touchdowns and interceptions. You look at the yardage there too. He's a guy that has gotten 200 plus yards a game. Now, are we going to see a game like Minnesota where he gets 34 points, is throwing 54 times for 4 touchdowns and almost 400 yards? No, right? Based off of what we kind of see, we're looking at a game like maybe the Rams. I think this is one of the games, Rams Arizona, one of these two, right? To where Jacksonville, right as of right now, their offense is just very underperforming, but with how bad their defense is, it really doesn't help their offense at all. So I'm kind of one of these two games. So right, Jacksonville still, I guess you could say, is better against the run, but as a whole, their defense is just bottom in anything. You could pretty much do whatever you want to that defense, and there's not much of an answer. So at 7,100, he's just a very safe floor quarterback. If you're looking to save some money, Tua is going to play and be the quarterback at 6,100 against Arizona. Granted, we only have a 1-game sample size pretty much. We could say 2, right, against Buffalo. He did get out towards the end of the game where they weren't going to do anything anyway, right? Took an injury. He took a scramble and a hit he really didn't need to take, but that's, in the past now. But we've seen him play a really good defense and a really bad defense. 21 against a bad defense, 8.5 against a good defense. So this one has a very bad defense with some injuries, especially in the secondary, missing a corner, which is crucial. And this Miami team really, really, really needs to start getting the ball rolling. Obviously, they aren't too far behind the rest of the division outside of Buffalo. The Jets aren't doing what they're supposed to do, but the AFC is always going to be a strong conference the way the quarterbacks are and the way the quarterbacks are getting paid. So you're going to need, at least 9 wins. I would assume most years 10 to guarantee something, and even that is tough. But 2 at 6,100, it's just a very cheap. I mean, with how cheap Tyreek Hill is, we'll talk about that soon. It's a very cheap stack with some very high upside of what we see Miami in years past do with Tua at the quarterback instead of other guys like Huntley and Thompson this season. So 2 at 6,100. And then you could throw one of 2 names in, but I'm going to say Bo Nix at 5,600 against Carolina. Enough said about how bad Carolina's defense is. I'm not going to pour salt in the wound for this Carolina team. Obviously, a lot of injuries, both now offensively, defensively. Andy Dalton with the unfortunate accident. Adam Thielen got hurt pretty early on the IR. Deontay Johnson now out. Brian Bird's trading out. Like there's so much. Troy Hill released. A lot going on with this Carolina team. And Denver has been seeming like they're getting things going, right? I had Denver as a bottom team this season. I looked at their defense. I said, hey, they don't have enough replacements. No, they do. They don't care. They don't care what I say. This team has been red hot fire. Now, honestly, if you look at who they played. They played Seattle, they played Pittsburgh, they played Tampa, and then you're seeing a New Orleans team that's very banged up, a Chargers team that's very banged up, a Vegas bottom team, a Jets team. I mean, that game was just ugly. I'm not going to say the Jets... it was an ugly game. The weather made that game ugly, and I'm not going to go much off of that either side. But Bo Nix, if you're talking about value, right, he gets the 6 in that ugly game, right? That is his floor. That game was very, very ugly. It not just the way teams are playing, it's the weather. The weather took control of that game. Neither team wanted to lose this game, clearly, but only 60 passing yards. But the rushing upside is what makes Bo Nix valuable. That's always what you look for when you're finding some value in quarterbacks, is rushing upside. Obviously, like something like Anthony Richardson against Houston is 5,800. There's value there. But you look at someone, Geno Smith, who is $300 more, not really going to run the ball too much. Like, we see it every now and then, but for the most part, he's not going to scramble. They're not going to make a whole lot of plays where he's scrambling, but he's getting good NFL stats, good passing stats. I mean, you look at the touchdowns, like Geno Smith's having a really solid year for the amount of touchdowns, 8 touchdowns. But with the passing attempts and the yards, they don't add up. It's Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet. But for someone like Bo Nix, really good matchup for not only him, the running backs, the receivers, tight end, the defense. Pretty much anything there for Denver I like. But Jameis Winston, you could throw Jameis Winston in at 5,200. You don't even need to put anybody with him. If you want to, I recommend David Njoku is the guy I'm kind of looking at. But I don't trust Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, any of those guys to really be needed in cash. I think there's value in other places and some really solid matchups in others that we'll talk about here shortly. But moving on to running back, Ken Walker against Buffalo. Obviously, we've seen Buffalo just get torched by running backs so far this season. And the touchdown upside for Ken Walker is just ridiculous. 3 touchdowns in those last 2 games. Against the Giants, he still gets 14 points from the receiving. 3 touchdowns against Detroit. Like, he is a touchdown machine, getting the receiving work when need be too. And we have a really tough game, right? This is kind of, Buffalo is a good pass defense, really bad run defense. It all depends if you're targeting a running back, how Buffalo's offense plays. If Buffalo's offense is playing really good, you're going to see running backs get carries. And we've seen Ken Walker get some really garbage touchdowns. But that doesn't matter, right? Those are fantasy points for him. But my only concern with this one is if Buffalo gets a lead, are we going to see the Ken Walker rushing and touchdown upside, especially with DK Metcalf out? Next on the list, Breece Hall, 7,300 against New England. He's just getting so much volume now. And with the addition of Devontae Adams, like, you look at it, right? A week 6 against Buffalo, 18 carries, 6 targets. Against Pittsburgh, where the game kind of got out of the hand in the second half. 12 rushing attempts, but made up for it in 9 targets. And you go back and look at week 3 against New England, 5 targets still, 16 carries, so got 21 attempts in that game, right? So the volume is there for him. A really good matchup. Obviously, Devontae Adams getting added just makes it that much better for someone like Breece Hall, to where Allen Lazard, unfortunately, is out, but Mike Williams will fit in. Not as good as Allen Lazard, but still having those 2 guys. Like Christian Gonzalez is going to play Garrett Wilson or Devontae Adams really, really tough. But that's the thing. You have Christian Gonzalez cover one of them, and the other one has a very good matchup. So it helps someone like Breece Hall, to where there's a lot to watch out for in that Jets offense. And once they start clicking, whenever they start clicking as a whole, that team's going to be very scary if they ever do. But Breece Hall in a really good spot. I mentioned Bijan Robinson against Tampa Bay at 7,200. With the injuries in Tampa Bay's offense, we could see Atlanta get a lead and then rely upon Bijan and Tyler Algier. And that's always been Bijan's thing, is Tyler Algier is so efficient and so good behind him. You're never going to see Bijan get all of the carries. They have to use Tyler Algier, and they don't need to just use Bijan that much, right? But we look at it the last few weeks, he's starting to get that volume, right? Goes from 12 to 15 and 21 last week in that matchup. In the last two games, 51 DK points combined. So Bijan been killing it. I am going to throw out James Cook. Now, I don't think this is a cash play, but you look at how Seattle's played against running backs. Yeah, like Davis has been playing pretty good for them. They get a big lead against Tennessee. Don't really need to use him all that much, right? Let him get healthy. In this one, this could be a really good game script for James Cook with how bad Seattle has been against the run. J.K. Dobbins, another name I'll mention at 6,900 going against New Orleans. Just a really good matchup for him. Chuba Hubbard, another name. But if we're talking realistic cash, I'm going to say Devon Achane at 6,200. I just think he's way too cheap with Tua being back in. That's a huge plus for him. But Javonte Williams at 6K against Carolina. If you're looking for someone cheap to throw in, I mentioned when I was talking to Bo Nix of how bad Carolina's defense is, all the injuries and stuff there. But you know, we've kind of seen Javonte have those good games. This is one of those games where he can have a good game, right? See, against Vegas, gets you 16 DraftKings points, gets you 13 carries, 14 carries against New Orleans last week. Another really solid matchup for him. So yeah, I think he's definitely worth targeting in cash. Now, moving on to receiver, there are so many good plays, right? You could go Cincinnati, Philly, and go A.J. Brown. You go T. Higgins, who popped up questionable. If T. Higgins is out, then Jamar Chase by a mile is a good play. Stephon Diggs at 7,500 is definitely worth considering it for cash. I don't think it's a must, but I do think it's a really good cash play. Drake London against Tampa Bay. My only concern is what Tampa Bay's offense can do. If Tampa Bay's offense kind of, obviously Mike Evans and Chris Godwin can't be replaced that easy with who they have, but if they could get the ball rolling with the way they use their running backs, with how Kate Otten kind of stepped up, we've seen Baker have a connection with Shepard before. There's a way Tampa's offense can fight in this one. And Drake London in their last matchup, I mean, yeah, 12 for 154 and a touchdown. They definitely found something in that game. There was a huge game for Drake London. Tyreek Hill 7K is a cash play for me. He's just too cheap. Tyreek Hill is too cheap. Even without like Tua, Tyreek Hill at 7K just has that upside. Obviously, we see week 1 with Tua, 12 targets, 130 yards, and a touchdown against Jacksonville. Against Buffalo, that whole team played bad. It was a bad game in general, upsetting, and we haven't seen Tyreek Hill do anything since. But this is going to be a big game for Miami, so I like Tyreek Hill to stack with Tua. It's very cheap stack at that. Going down, Jayden Reed, 6,700 against Jacksonville, pulls a good matchup in that one. Definitely want to get some exposure to Green Bay. We keep going down. T. Higgins. If T. Higgins is good to go, I think he's in a great spot. If you wanted to target Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, run it back with T. Higgins, I think that's a really good option as well. I will mention Brian Thomas Jr. If you are wanting to run Green Bay in cash, you want to go Jordan Love, Jayden Reed, get whoever else, Dobbs, maybe Tucker Kraft. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is a good run back piece at 6,400. We keep going down. If DK Metcalf is out, I think JSN's in a really good spot at 6,100, especially to be considered for cash. Other than that, Jalen Waddle, this is just cash. if you guys are interested in any of my tournament or value plays, all of that is available on our website. Go check that out. The link for that will be in the description. It's a very cheap subscription package. You get DraftKings plays, FanDuel plays, bets and props, any DFS or fantasy questions, all of that available in our website, so check that out. But Jalen Waddle, 5,400. Like I mentioned how cheap Tyreek Hill is. Jalen Waddle also very, very cheap at 5,400. Week 1 as well. Like if you played Tua, Jalen Waddle, and Tyreek, you had a really good week, right? And we're seeing Jalen Waddle at a very bottomed price for him, so I really like that one. McConkey at 5,100 against New Orleans pulls a really good matchup against New Orleans. Obviously, their secondary got banged up, losing a corner for the year, but McConkey's target share and his ceiling for what this offense could be relies upon him, in my opinion. They spread the ball pretty far against Arizona. It was a good matchup for him, and they just couldn't get it going. But at 5,100, I think it's still a good price for him. I think he's still a cash option there. And then last but not least, I'm just going to go to the team because their prices are all pretty close together. Sterling, Shepard, McMillan, and Palmer. All those guys are playable in cash. I do not care, what case you make for any of the Tampa Bay receivers of Palmer, McMillan, and Shepard. You can make a case for either one. I'll take it, right? They're all so cheap, and I would expect, McMillan and Palmer to kind of get the majority of the ownership. Shepard still is kind of that sneak play just because of his matchup, in my opinion, against Atlanta, to where all three of these guys are playable in cash. I don't think any one of them, if you want to make a case for them, I have a problem with any three of those guys being an option in cash. Moving on to tight end, there's only 3 plays, in my opinion, as of right now for cash, unless something pops up. David Njoku, 5,100 against Baltimore, pulls in a really good matchup. Have Jameis Winston, who Nick Chubb's back. If Cleveland plans on winning, they're going to have to be very aggressive defensively, get a lead early, and use Nick Chubb. If they're down, they're going to throw the ball a lot. And someone like David Njoku, who got 14 targets last week against Cincy, you're going to get Jameis Winston, who, the way Cleveland is right now, he's going to have to be aggressive if they want to somehow come back in this division. And David Njoku's probably going to lead the charge there. So 5,100, I think he's still in a great price spot this week. If you're looking to save, Cade Otton, 3,500 against Atlanta. We see him have, I think, a career high, if I'm not mistaken, 8 for 100. I do believe that is a career game for Cade Otton. 21 DraftKings points. Because the game was when it was, we get a discount at Cade Otton. If the game would have happened on Sunday night versus Monday night, we'd get Cade Otton probably at like 4,600 at least. But so we get a great discount on Cade Otton. This one I'll say watch is Will Dissly at 3K. He's the other play. If Hayden Hurst is out, if he is good to go, definitely worth watching in this one. I mean, you just look at his fantasy numbers all year. They're not going to blow you away, but for 3K, if you get a tight end that puts up 6 against a defense that has kind of struggled against tight ends as of late, and obviously you can see by 11 targets, they really wanted to get the tight end involved. Will Dissly is an option there. So I'm not going to throw any particular name out in cash for defenses. I think defenses is random, right? You can have a special teams touchdown that pays off, a fumble that pays off, return. You just want to target either one, bad offenses, or 2, pray that your defense gets a defensive touchdown. I will say, looking at it from the cheap defenses, like New England 2,500, Falcons 2,600, the Bears 2,700. If you want to pay up for defense, Denver is 3,700. Chiefs 3,600. So there's definitely some pay ups this week as well as values. So I'm not going to go over. That's just kind of the defenses I'm looking at. So hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. Like I mentioned, if you guys are interested in joining us, the link for our website is in the description down below. I will see you guys in the next one.